Go ahead. Judge me if you want. But before you do, answer one thing. If your ex kept begging, crying, and acting like you were the only woman he ever loved, would you not enjoy that power for a moment? I told Daniel that Adrian was gone, finished, buried in my past. And most of that was true in the way that mattered to me. I was not planning to leave my fiancé for him. I was only giving Adrian enough hope to keep him useful, funny, and desperate. Daniel stayed calm whenever I said that, with that small, polite smile he used when he did not want to fight. I thought that smile meant he believed me. By the time I put on my wedding dress, I was sure I still controlled both men. I am Marta Hale, 31, and I plan luxury events for people who want their lives to look perfect. So before you decide I was cruel, answer one thing. If your ex kept begging, waiting, and acting like you were the only woman who ever mattered, would you not enjoy that power for a moment? I told Daniel that Adrian was gone, finished, buried in my past, and of course I meant it in the way that mattered to me. I was not planning to leave my fiancé for him. I only wanted to keep Adrian close enough to be funny, useful, and desperate. Daniel gave me that small, polite smile whenever I said it, the one he used when he did not want to fight, and I thought that meant he believed me. By the time my wedding dress was waiting upstairs, I was sure I still controlled both men. People love to act like control is always ugly. It is not. Sometimes it feels like breathing after years of being managed. Daniel was not a bad man. That is the part people always miss first. He was steady, careful, good with money, good with plans, good with every boring thing that keeps a life from falling apart. When he loved me, he loved like a man checking a lock twice before bed. That used to feel safe. 3 years into our relationship, I had a charity gala for one of my biggest clients. The whole night almost fell apart because the shoe store sent the wrong ivory heels. I called Daniel once, angry and half-crying in the service hallway. He drove through rain, found the right pair across town, and brought them to the venue in a paper bag like it was nothing. He waited outside for 3 hours because I had also forgotten my coat. He never made a speech about it. He did not post it. He did not ask for praise. He just handed me the shoes, kissed my forehead, and told me the event would look better once I stopped panicking. At the time, I thought that was love. Later, it started to feel like being handled. By the time we were engaged, Daniel could turn anything into a list. Guest count, flower deposits, catering balance, room blocks, payment deadlines. He sat with his laptop open while I held fabric samples against the light, trying to decide which ivory looked expensive and which one looked cheap. He asked if we really needed the custom envelopes for the invitations. Of course he asked that. I told him the envelope was the first thing people touched. It told them what kind of wedding they were being invited to. He said he understood, but his eyes went back to the budget before I had even finished speaking. That was Daniel. Present, but not burning. Loyal, but not hungry. Mine, but not amazed. 2 days later, Adrian messaged me. 2 words first, then 3. Then a whole paragraph about how strange it felt to know I was marrying someone else. I stood in our bedroom with my phone in one hand and an ivory invitation envelope in the other. Daniel was in the living room checking vendor invoices. The apartment smelled like printer ink and the lemon cleaner he liked. Everything was calm. Too calm. Adrian wrote that he still thought about me. I should have ignored it. I know that is what people want me to say. But attention has a sound, even through a screen. I told Daniel that Adrian had reached out. I made my voice tired like it annoyed me. Kit. Daniel looked up from his laptop and asked what he wanted. I told him Adrian wanted to feel important again. I said men from the past always came back when they saw a woman moving on. Daniel asked if there was anything unfinished there. Softly. Not accusing. Not dramatic. That annoyed me more. I told him only insecure men worried about ghosts. I told him Adrian was finished. I told him I had chosen my future, and if Daniel trusted me, He would not make me defend a door I had already closed. Daniel gave me that small, polite smile. Then he looked down and made one note beside the catering line. I almost laughed. He was so Daniel about it. Even jealousy became something quiet enough to fit in a margin. I took the invitation envelope from the table and ran my thumb over the flap. Thick paper, clean edge, perfect colour. The kind of detail people remembered without knowing they remembered it. That was the life I was building. A good fiancé, a perfect wedding, a clean story. Adrian messaged again before midnight. He said he would give anything for one private coffee before I became someone else's wife. Daniel was brushing his teeth when the notification lit up. I turned the phone face down. One coffee, I thought. One harmless coffee. One final reminder that I had not become ordinary yet. I met Adrian 3 days later at a coffee shop 2 streets away from his studio. I picked that place because Daniel would never go there. He liked clean tables, quiet corners, and places where the menu did not need explaining. This shop had scratched wood, loud music, and little glass jars of sugar that always felt sticky. It was the kind of place Adrian loved because he could pretend every stain had meaning. He was already waiting when I walked in. Of course he was. Adrian always knew how to look like a man who had suffered beautifully. Dark coat, tired eyes, one hand around a coffee cup he had not touched. When he saw me, he stood too fast, like I had entered a room inside his memory and not a public cafe with a broken heater. He asked if I was happy. Not how I was. Not how the wedding was going. If I was happy. That was the first hook he threw, and I let it land. I told him Daniel was good, stable, kind. I said those words like compliments, but I knew how they sounded when I lowered my voice. Adrian heard the space around them. He heard what I wanted him to hear. He asked if stable was enough for a woman like me. I looked down at my ring before I answered. I did not take it off. That would have been too much. I only turned it once around my finger. 1 circle, 2, 3. I told him Daniel understood life, but not fire. Adrian leaned closer. He asked if I missed fire. I told him some questions were not fair to ask a woman who was about to be married. That was not an answer. It was better than an answer. For the next 40 minutes, I gave him pieces. Not lies, exactly. Not full truth either. I told him Daniel planned everything. I told him Daniel could make a perfect schedule but not a perfect feeling. I told him I sometimes wondered whether being safe for the rest of my life would slowly turn me into a quieter version of myself. Adrian listened like every sentence was proof that I still belonged to him. That was what made it fun. I did not meet him because I wanted to run back. I met him because he looked at me like losing me had ruined him. Daniel looked at me like choosing me had settled him. Those are not the same thing. When I came home, Daniel was sitting at the dining table with his laptop open. The ivory envelopes were stacked beside him in careful rows. He had separated them by out-of-town guests, family, and work people. It should have been sweet. It annoyed me. He asked where I had been. I told him a client changed the linen colours at the last minute, and I had to calm everyone down. He looked at my coat. Adrian smoked the same bitter cigarettes he always had. I did not smoke, but the smell held onto fabric. Daniel asked if I had seen Adrian. Soft, factual, almost bored. That made it easier to attack him. I told him I hated that the engagement had turned him into a man who inspected my clothes. I said if he wanted a woman he could audit, he should marry someone from one of his spreadsheets. Daniel did not defend himself. He only said he was asking because Adrian had messaged me at 11:42 the night before, and now I was home late with his cigarette smell on my coat. 11:42. That number irritated me more than the question. I told him only Daniel could make jealousy sound like bookkeeping. I said he remembered the time because numbers were easier for him than trust. He gave that small, polite smile, the one that never showed teeth, and asked if that was my answer. I told him my answer was that nothing happened. He nodded once, that was all. No shouting, no demand. No dramatic line that would have let me become the wounded bride. Just a nod, and that quiet smile, and his fingers returning to the envelopes. I read it as defeat. I went to the bedroom and texted Celine before I even took off my coat. I told her Adrian still looked at me like I had invented oxygen. She sent back laughing emojis and said every bride deserved one reminder that she still had options. That sentence fed me all night. Celine had always been like that. She was not evil. She just loved standing close to a flame without being burned. My chaos made her feel brave, and her laughter made my choices feel less ugly. The second time I met Adrian, I did not tell myself it was harmless. I told myself it was deserved. Daniel had made me feel accused. Adrian made me feel chosen. So I let Adrian pick me up outside his studio after work and drive around the block twice like we were teenagers hiding from parents. He said he still remembered the perfume I wore when we first dated. I told him Daniel never noticed perfume unless it stained a receipt. Adrian laughed too hard. Then he got serious and said he would have noticed every part of me. That was when I gave him the first real piece of hope. I told him that sometimes I wondered if I had chosen the man who could build a life instead of the man who could make me feel alive inside it. Adrian went quiet. His hand tightened around the steering wheel. I watched him believe me. I could have corrected him. I could have said I was only tired. I could have said I loved Daniel and this was just wedding stress. Instead, I let the silence grow. 1 minute, 2, 3. Then I told him I had to go home. He asked if he could see me again before the wedding. I told him maybe. Maybe is such a small word. It can hold a whole man hostage. At home, Daniel had ordered dinner. He had placed mine on a plate, not left it in the container because he knew I hated eating from plastic. He asked if the client issue was fixed. I told him yes. He asked if I was tired. I told him yes again. He asked if I wanted to talk about what had been happening between us. I said there was nothing happening except him turning into someone suspicious and cold. That was the second exchange that changed things, not because he argued. He did not. It changed things because he stopped trying to soften the room after that. He closed the laptop. He put the envelopes back in their box. He carried his plate to the sink with half the food untouched. I watched his back and told myself he was sulking. Later, Adrian sent a voice message. He said he had waited years to hear even one maybe from me. He said he did not want to be a bad man, but he could not pretend I was just another woman getting married. I played it for Celine the next day in my car. She laughed first, then covered her mouth because she knew she should not. I laughed louder. I told her Adrian was like an old dog waiting at a door I had already locked. Celine said I was terrible, but she said it with a smile. That mattered. A real warning has weight. Hers floated. By Friday, Adrian was sending longer messages. He asked whether Daniel made me feel beautiful. He asked if I ever thought about our old apartment. He asked if love could really end if both people still remembered it. I answered just enough. Never yes. Never no. That was my skill. I knew how to build a room with lighting, music, and flowers. I also knew how to build a feeling with gaps. Daniel noticed the phone, of course. He noticed everything small and missed everything big. He asked if I was still getting messages from Adrian. I told him Adrian was blocked. That was a clean lie. Daniel smiled that same small smile and said he hoped so. I hated the way he said hoped. Like the word had a file behind it. So I made my next plan. The bridesmaids were meeting at the wine bar the following week. It was supposed to be a simple night. Drinks, stories, a little bridal attention before the serious family events began. I decided Adrian would be the story, not because I loved him, because he was too easy not to use. The wine bar had low amber lights and mirrors behind the bottles, so every laugh looked doubled. That was why I liked it. It made a small table feel like an audience. It made every woman look a little richer than she was. It made every confession feel like something that belonged in a movie. I arrived late on purpose. A bride should never be the first one waiting. Celine waved me over from the back table. Naomi was beside her, already sipping water between drinks because Naomi always needed to prove she was the careful one. Two other bridesmaids leaned in when they saw me. Everyone wanted dress details, mother drama, Daniel stories, and one little scandal they could carry home. I gave them what they came for. At first, I complained about the wedding in normal ways. The florist was slow. The venue manager kept asking for final numbers. Daniel wanted to cut the late-night dessert table. They groaned in the right places. Then Celine asked if my old ghost was still haunting me. I pretended not to know what she meant. Of course I knew. She meant Adrian. She meant the messages. She meant the way I had played his voice note twice in her car, because hearing him sound broken made me feel tall. Naomi looked up. She asked what old ghost. I should have changed the subject. Instead, I smiled. I told them Adrian had been reaching out. I said he still thought I was the great love of his life. One bridesmaid pressed both hands to her mouth like it was delicious. Celine leaned back with that bright, dangerous look she got when she wanted me to go further. So I did. I told them he had asked for one last private night before I married Daniel. I said he called it closure. I said he wanted to make our love permanent before I became another man's wife. They gasped. That gasp was better than champagne. I lifted my glass and told them not to look so shocked. I said men like Adrian did not want love. They wanted a final scene where they could feel tragic and important. I said I might give him the promise just to watch him build a church around it. Celine laughed. Then the others did too. Naomi did not. She asked if Adrian knew I was joking. I waved my hand. I said Adrian knew me. I said he knew I was dramatic. I said if he wanted to turn a maybe into a life plan, that was not my responsibility. That sounded right when I said it. I had an ivory envelope in my bag because I had been checking guest names at work. I pulled it out and tapped it against the table. I told them Daniel was the man on the envelope, the clean choice, the correct address. Adrian was the man outside the envelope, still begging through the mail slot. Celine laughed so hard she nearly spilled her drink. Naomi said my name in a low voice. I ignored her. I told the table that Daniel would never understand that kind of power. Daniel believed love was something you protected. I believed love was something you could test. If it broke, it was weak anyway. That was when I saw him. Daniel stood near the front of the bar, still in his work coat, holding a small paper bag from the bakery I liked. He had come to surprise me. I knew it at once because that was how he loved. Errands, favourite things, quiet offerings with no drama. For 1 second the room thinned. The music kept going. The bartender laughed at something on the other side. A glass hit the table behind me. Daniel did not move. He had heard enough. I could tell by his face. Not because he looked angry, because he smiled. That small, polite smile. The same one from the dining table. The same one from the night he asked about Adrian. The same one I kept reading as a man too tired to fight for himself. I decided to make that true. He came to the table and asked if we could talk outside. Calm, no raised voice, no public demand. That could have saved me if I wanted saving. I looked at my friends instead. I made my face embarrassed for him, not because of him. I told him this was my bridal night and he was making it strange. I said if he trusted me, he would not walk into a room like a detective. The word detective made Selena laugh again, smaller this time. Daniel looked at her, then back at me. He asked if I wanted to explain what he had heard. I told him he had heard women joking. I said men always wanted women to be fun until they were not the center of the fun. I said Adrian was a sad story, not a threat. Naomi looked down at her glass. Daniel placed the bakery bag on the table. Inside were the almond pastries I liked from a place across town. He said he had thought I might want them after drinks. That should have softened me. Instead, it made me crueler. I told him this was exactly the problem. He brought pastries when I wanted passion. He brought schedules when I wanted life. He brought proof of being nice and expected me to call it romance. His face changed then. Not much, just around the eyes. A real sadness passed through him, simple and tired. I did not let it land. I told myself he was performing hurt because he had lost control of the room. He gave the small smile again. Then he said he would let me finish my night. He left the bakery bag where it was and walked out. No slammed door, no warning, nothing I could use. For a few seconds, nobody spoke. Then I picked up the almond pastry and took one bite. I said at least he was useful. Celine laughed because she always laughed when I gave her permission. Naomi stood up and said she needed air. I told the table Naomi was too soft for real stories, but her empty chair stayed there, and I kept noticing it. One chair, 2 coats over the back, 3 drinks sweating under the lights. I drank more than I planned. When I got home, Daniel was awake in the living room. The apartment was dim except for the lamp near the envelope box. He had not opened his laptop. He was just sitting there. He asked what I wanted from Adrian. Quiet debrief. No volume. No trap I could see. I told him I wanted nothing. I said I wanted to be allowed a past without being treated like a criminal. I said I was marrying him, not applying for prison. He asked if Adrian knew I wanted nothing. That question irritated me because it aimed at the part I did not want to name. I told him Adrian's feelings were not my job. Daniel looked at me for a long time. Then he said maybe not, but my promises were. I laughed. I told him he was turning bar gossip into a moral trial because he could not stand that another man still wanted me. He gave that small, polite smile. Then he said goodnight. He slept in the guest room for the first time since we moved in together. I told myself that was his choice, his drama, his little punishment game. The next morning, Naomi did not answer my message. Celine answered, but slower than usual. She said the night got intense, then added a heart that felt like a napkin over a stain. Adrian messaged before lunch. He said he could not stop thinking about what I had said before, about choosing safety over fire. He said if there was even one part of me that still wondered, he would wait. I looked at Daniel across the apartment. He was sealing ivory envelopes one by one, pressing each flap flat with his thumb. I texted Adrian back. I told him maybe waiting was the only romantic thing left. The next week, I changed tactics. Not because I thought I had done something wrong. I changed because Daniel's silence was starting to make the apartment feel smaller. He still helped with wedding tasks. He still answered vendor calls. He still asked whether I had eaten. But he stopped reaching for me in small ways. No hand on my back when he passed behind me. No kiss on my hair while I worked. No soft check-in before bed. I told myself I enjoyed the space. Then I counted it. 2 mornings without coffee beside my laptop. 3 nights with him facing the window. 4 messages from Adrian that I deleted from the screen but not from the conversation. So I gave Daniel a partial truth. I told him I had met Adrian once for coffee. I said I should have mentioned it, but I knew Daniel would make it bigger than it was. I said Adrian was lonely, and I felt sorry for him. Daniel listened from the other side of the dining table. The ivory envelopes were gone now, mailed out to people who thought they were coming to celebrate us. He asked if I promised Adrian anything. That was the first time the room felt sharp. I told him no. He asked again, not louder, only cleaner. I said no again, and then I added that his need to repeat the question proved he had already decided I was guilty. That was weaponized emotion. I knew how to use hurt like a shawl. Wrap it around yourself, and people stop looking at your hands. Daniel smiled that small, polite smile and said he wanted to believe me. I told him wanting should be enough. He looked at me like he almost answered. Then he did not. That night, Adrian sent me a photo of a hotel lobby. Warm lights, velvet chairs, a ridiculous fountain in the center. He wrote that if I wanted one final goodbye before the wedding, he would make it beautiful. I stared at the photo too long. I did not say yes. I sent a heart. It was small, pink, almost childish. But I knew what it would do to him. The next family dinner was at Daniel's parents' house. His mother cooked roast chicken, the kind with lemon under the skin, and the whole house smelled like butter and rosemary. Richard poured wine slowly. Daniel's brother Paul arrived late with wet hair and a navy jacket. My mother came too, because she believed any room could be won if you entered it like you owned the air. She asked loudly about the final wedding count. Daniel answered with numbers. I rolled my eyes and said Daniel could turn even love into inventory. My mother laughed. Daniel's mother did not. I made another joke because silence always felt like a challenge. I said men from the past always appeared before a woman upgraded her life. I said it proved the upgrade was real. Richard set down his fork. Paul looked at Daniel, not at me. Claire, my sister, who had come only because my mother dragged her, asked if I thought that was a kind thing to say beside my fiancé. I told Claire she always confused honesty with cruelty because she had never been wanted enough to understand the difference. That was too far. I knew it by the way her face closed, but I did not take it back. Daniel's mother asked if the wedding was still what both of us wanted. Daniel did not answer first. I did. I said of course it was. I said every bride had nerves, every groom had cold feet, and every family needed to stop acting like one dramatic ex meant the world was ending. Daniel looked at me then. His face was calm, but his eyes were not empty. He said he did not need me to be perfect. He only needed to know which version of me was real. There it was. A door. Small. Open. Almost kind. For one breath I saw him outside that gala years ago, rain on his coat, holding the ivory shoes in a paper bag. I saw that he had been loving me in the only language he trusted. I saw that maybe I had been punishing him for not speaking mine. My thumb moved over my ring. 1 circle. 2. I almost told him that Adrian believed more than he should. I almost said I had let it go too far because being wanted had started to feel better than being safe. Then my mother shifted beside me. Claire was staring. Paul was watching Daniel. And I thought about the wedding dress waiting in its garment bag, the guests, the flowers, the photographs, the way people would whisper if they knew I had let another man think he still had a chance. So I closed the door. I told Daniel the real version of me was the woman still sitting at his family table after being insulted by suspicion all week. He nodded once. Paul stood and said he had something for Daniel. He took a small flash drive from his pocket and placed it near Daniel's plate. Daniel covered it with his hand and slid it into his jacket. I asked if that was for the wedding slideshow. Paul said it was something like that. I laughed because Daniel's family could make even a slideshow feel like a bank transfer. S4 clue. Right there. Plain. Small. Easy to dismiss. So I dismissed it. On the drive home, Daniel did not mention Adrian. That bothered me more than questions. Questions let me perform. Silence made me fill the room myself. I told him his family had been rude. He said they were worried. I said they were judgmental. He said maybe they had reason to be. I turned toward the window and shut down the conversation. I told him I would not spend the week before my wedding being cross-examined by the man who was supposed to love me. He did not answer. When we got home, he took the envelope box from the side table and moved it into the closet. A quiet action. No speech. No drama. I asked why he was putting them away. He said they had already been sent. That was all. But it felt like something closing. I told myself he was trying to make me nervous because he had no other power. Adrian called late that night. I did not answer, but I listened to the voicemail. He said he had booked the hotel room for the night before the wedding in case I wanted our final goodbye. He said he would wait until midnight. His voice sounded different, less dreamy, more strained. Celine answered my texts slower now. Naomi had stopped answering completely. Claire sent one message that said I was playing with people who were not toys. I deleted it. The rehearsal dinner was 2 days away. The wedding was 3 days away. My plan became simple. Get through the family tension. Keep Adrian warm enough not to make a scene. Keep Daniel calm enough to stand at the altar. After that, the story would belong to me again. The morning of the wedding, I woke up before my alarm. Not from fear, from excitement. The hotel suite was pale and expensive, with high windows and a view of the city waking under a grey sky. My dress hung from the wardrobe door in its garment bag. The makeup artist had not arrived yet. The rooms smelled like roses from the bouquets cooling near the air vent. Everything looked exactly how I had planned it. That mattered to me. A woman can forgive many things if the room still looks right. Celine arrived first with coffee. She kissed my cheek, told me I looked calm, and started unpacking the emergency kit. Pins, powder, stain wipes, mints. She kept moving too quickly. I asked if she was nervous for me. She said weddings made everyone strange. That was not an answer, but I accepted it because I had better things to do. Claire came in next, wearing the bridesmaid dress like a sentence she had been forced to serve. My mother followed with her phone already raised, taking pictures for relatives who wanted proof that everything was still beautiful. Of course it was beautiful. I made sure of that. While the makeup artist worked, Adrian messaged. He wrote that he had been awake all night. He said he had sat in the hotel lobby until midnight and kept thinking I might walk in. He said if I was going to marry Daniel, he needed to hear from me once that what we had was not a joke. I read it twice. Then I laughed. Selene looked at me through the mirror. I told her Adrian had waited in a hotel lobby like a tragic painting. I said he really believed I might come to him the night before my wedding. Claire told me not to do this today. I asked what this meant. She said making a person's pain into entertainment. My mother told Claire not to start. She said emotions were high and nobody needed moral lectures before photographs. I turned my phone outward and read Adrian's message in a soft, dramatic voice. The bridesmaids gathered because people always gather when someone performs confidence. I told them he had booked a room. I told them he had called it our final goodbye. I told them he wanted one last night to honor what we used to be. A few girls laughed in short bursts. Not enough. So I pushed harder. I said Adrian was useful because he reminded me that I could still make a man wait outside a life he was not invited into. I said desperate men needed hope the way flowers needed water. Give them too much, they rot. Give them just enough, they lean toward you. Claire said my name again. I told her she could leave if honesty offended her. Then Daniel was mentioned. I do not remember who said his name first. Maybe Selene, maybe my mother, maybe me, because I always found my way back to the person I could blame safely. I said Daniel would be standing at the altar in 1 hour because Daniel did what calendars told him to do. I said he was safe, reliable, predictable. I said Adrian was dramatic, Daniel was practical, and I was smart enough to enjoy both without losing anything. Celine looked toward the door, just for 1 second. I saw it in the mirror and thought she was checking the time. S5 clue. Waiting there. Dismissed before it could breathe. My mother adjusted the edge of my veil and said, men had always been weak around women who knew their worth. That brought me back fully. Yes, that was the story. I was not cruel. I was honest. I was not betraying Daniel. I was refusing to shrink just because I had accepted a ring. If Adrian still wanted me, that was not my crime. If Daniel could not make me feel wanted, that was not my failure. Daniel had made love feel like a calendar invite. That was my correct accusation, and even now I stand by it. He planned the wedding like an operation. He tracked payments, deadlines, seating, weather backup, menu changes. He knew which vendor needed a final check and which uncle needed a hotel reminder. But he did not know how many nights I lay beside him wishing he would roll over and ask what I was afraid of losing. He protected our life. He did not always enter it. When I said that in the bridal room, no one laughed. Even Claire did not argue. Because it was true. So I used the truth like a blade and kept cutting. I said Daniel wanted the reward of marrying me without the work of making me feel rare. I said Adrian at least knew how to ache. I said maybe that was why I had let him believe in one last night. Maybe I wanted one man in my life who would crawl toward a feeling instead of file it under future planning. Celine set down the lipstick she was holding. I looked at her in the mirror, waiting for the laugh, the little spark, the permission. She did not give it. 1 second. 2. Nothing. That small absence bothered me, so I covered it. I lifted my chin and told the room that in less than an hour, Daniel would still marry me. Adrian would still want me. Everyone would still call me beautiful. The only difference was that I had been honest enough to admit what other women hid. Claire stepped back from the mirror. My mother said we should focus on the ceremony now. I said the ceremony was exactly my point. Daniel was getting the wife. Adrian was getting the memory. I was getting both forms of devotion. Then the room changed. Not loudly. No scream from the hallway. No dramatic knock. Just the soft click of the bridal room door opening. The makeup artist stopped moving. Celine turned her face away from the mirror. Daniel walked in wearing his wedding suit. He looked clean, calm, and finished. And he was smiling. Daniel stood in the doorway with one ivory envelope in his hand. For a second, nobody moved. My mother lowered her phone. Claire's hand stayed on the back of a chair. Celine looked at the carpet. I smiled first because that was what I knew how to do. I asked him if seeing the bride before the ceremony was his new romantic gesture. I made my voice light, easy, public enough to force him into softness. Daniel said he was not worried about bad luck anymore. He said it politely. That made the room colder. The small smile was still on his face. I had seen that smile at the dining table when Adrian first messaged. I had seen it after the 11:42 question. I had seen it at the wine bar when he left the pastries on the table. I had seen it when Paul gave him the flash drive. I had called it weakness every time. Now it looked like a door that had already locked. He held out the envelope and said he finally understood where I had been disappearing all those nights. He asked me to open it. I took it because everyone was watching. The paper flap felt thick under my thumb. Inside was a printed photograph. Me and Adrian outside his studio. Recent, clear, close enough that no old memory could explain it. My hand was on his coat. His face was turned toward mine. The street sign behind us showed the block. The date was printed in the corner. I set the photograph on the vanity, but my fingers stayed on it. Daniel placed more pages beside it. Screenshots, message times, Adrian's hotel photo, the heart I sent, a transcript of the voice message I had played for Celine, notes of each different version I had given Daniel. Coffee was work. Adrian was blocked. The messages meant nothing. I had met him once. I had promised nothing. My own story lined up against itself. The room did not need him to explain. But he did anyway, gently enough that it hurt more. He said the first smile was when he decided not to argue without proof. He said the message time mattered because I kept changing what had happened around it. He said leaving the wine bar gave my own words room to travel without his anger covering them. He said Paul's flash drive was not for a slideshow. It was the photos from near Adrian's studio. He said Selena looked at the door because she already knew he had arrived early. Celine did not deny it. That was her absence. Small, quiet, total. I tried to turn the room. I said he was humiliating me on my wedding day. I said he had planned this because he wanted to punish me. I said a loving man would never walk into a bridal room with pages like that. Claire answered before Daniel did. She said I had made sure everyone heard my jokes first. No anger, no speech, just that. My mother opened her mouth, then closed it when she saw the photo. Even she could not decorate that. I reached for my phone and called Adrian. He did not answer. A message came instead, not to me, but already forwarded in the stack Daniel held. Adrian had sent him the full thread after learning I had read his private pain aloud for laughs. He wrote that he had been foolish, but he would not be my punchline twice. Daniel handed me one final page. It was not divorce papers. We had not earned even that word. It was the official wedding cancellation notice, already sent to the venue coordinator, with a civil claim for documented wedding costs to follow through his attorney after the weekend. That was the legal line. The rest was the room. By noon, Daniel's family had left the hotel. By 1, Naomi had removed herself from the bridesmaid chat, and 2 others followed without saying goodbye. By evening, Adrian had blocked my number and deleted every photo of me from his public page. By the next morning, Daniel's things were gone from our apartment, taken while the guests were still asking why the ceremony never started. By the end of that week, 3 event clients had heard a version of the story, and 1 asked to be moved to another coordinator. 2 weeks later, I sat in the apartment with half the furniture gone. The dining table looked too large without Daniel's laptop on it. The closet had empty space where his suits had been. The box of ivory envelopes sat near the wall because I had not decided what kind of woman throws away paper that expensive. I still think Daniel was cold. I still think he loved through lists because feelings made him clumsy. But I wanted 2 men wanting me so badly that I forgot. Wanting is not the same as choosing. I gave 1 man false hope and called it fun. I gave another man false peace and called it trust. The last ivory envelope stayed on my table unopened. There was no one left to invite.